Good morning, folks. If you're just joining us, thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to wait maybe 3 minutes to allow others to join us as well, and then we're going to start today's morning school. Good morning, folks. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to wait maybe 2 more minutes, something like that, so we can get others to join us as well, and then we're going to start. Morning, folks. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to wait just 1 more minute, and then we're going to start today's discussion. And I think we are going to start. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Luigi Del Puerto. I'm the publisher and editor of the Arizona Capital Times. The Arizona Capital Times, of course, covers state government and public policy and politics. And if you don't have a subscription, let me know. I'll get you squared away. Today, we will talk about strategies to confront declining enrollment in higher education. Consider this. Nationally, community college enrollment fell by 21% this year, while post-secondary enrollment for first-time freshmen, that is the high school class of 2020, declined nearly 13% nationwide. In Arizona, statewide community college enrollment is down more than 16%. And while our universities have overall seen an increase in enrollment, that growth is driven by online students from out of state. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of this morning's discussion, Helios Education Foundation. Helios Education Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to enriching the lives of individuals in Arizona and Florida by creating opportunities for success in post-secondary education. The foundation invests in programs and initiatives that address some of the most critical issues affecting education today. Helios is focused on 3 impact areas: early grade success, college and career readiness, and post-secondary completion. And since its inception, Helios has invested millions of dollars across Arizona and Florida to improve student success and their long-term quality of life. Again, thank you, Helios Education Foundation, for sponsoring today's morning school. We have a great panel this morning. Joining us is Dr. Daniel Kaur, who is the president of Arizona Western College and who leads the college to foster a climate of innovation, collaboration, and stewardship. He is committed to ensuring first-generation students have the opportunity to succeed in post-secondary education. He currently serves on the Arizona Community College Coordinating Council, as well as the Arizona State Board of Education. Dr. Kaur, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Also joining us this morning is John Arnold, who is the executive director of the Arizona Board of Regents. He is responsible for guiding the board's strategic plan with goals to increase educational attainment and advance higher education in Arizona. And of course, one of the biggest challenges the universities face is the onset of the pandemic and going back to the classrooms, in this semester. John, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Also joining us this morning is Andrea Gonzalez Sotelo, who is the assistant director of Arizona Gear Up. Arizona Gear Up helps all students in Arizona reach and exceed their educational goals by collaborating with school partners throughout the state. Through Gear Up, Andrea promotes college readiness and access among underrepresented populations. Andrea, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Also joining us this morning is Superintendent Nora Gutierrez, who is the superintendent of the Tolleson Union High School District. Under her leadership, Tolleson focuses on college readiness and preparedness for all students, and the district consists of 7 high schools plus an online high school and serves nearly, get this, 12,000 high school students. Superintendent, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And finally, joining us this morning is Paul Luna, who is the president and CEO of the Helios Education Foundation. He's a passionate advocate of educational equality for all students, and he leads Helios in investing more than $260 million in educational initiatives that will close the achievement and degree completion gaps that exist throughout Arizona and Florida. Paul, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Luigi. Appreciate being a part of this panel.
Paul, give us an overview of what you're seeing in our state, in Florida, and nationally in terms of how this pandemic has affected enrollment in higher education.
So thank you, Luigi. And first, let me just thank you and the Arizona Capital Times for this morning scoop and an opportunity to be a part of it, to partner with you on this really important topic that I think is critical to our state and the future of our state of Arizona. As you mentioned, Helios Education Foundation is committed to student degree completion and student post-secondary attainment. Our vision, quite frankly, is very simple. It's every student in Arizona and Florida, which are the 2 states that we serve. We want every student to achieve a post-secondary education degree. And we do know that even though today we're talking specifically about the importance of what the data is telling us on the impact of what's happening with students, especially with the pandemic, in transitioning from high school into the college or post-secondary environment, also want to acknowledge, though, the importance of thinking about education attainment across the full education continuum. You know, the importance of early education and early learning is as critical to post-secondary completion as anything we do across the continuum. But it's important also today to acknowledge that what's happening in college enrollment, and especially what we're seeing is the declines in college enrollment, not just in Arizona and Florida, but really across the state. So post-secondary completion from our perspective is really the most important economic issue that's facing every state, but in particular in Arizona. And believe that we really need to prioritize increasing our degree completion, our degree attainment, to ensure that we continue to provide the type of future economic success. The stability of our state is really going to be driven by this education attainment. This is not new completely. We know as a state, for example, about 5 years ago, many individuals and organizations, state leaders, education leaders, all came together to prioritize post-secondary degree completion. And you may recall back then we established a very specific goal that our working adult population by the year 2030, at least 60% of our working population would have some type of post-secondary certificate, license, 2-year, 4-year degree, because we know that's what will drive the economy of Arizona moving forward. At the time, Arizona was at about 42% of degree attainment. We had been moving towards, and I think currently are about 46%. So we still have a way to go to get to 60%. But the reality is that the COVID-19 pandemic has put some barriers in our progress to get to that 60% goal. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today, to acknowledge what the data is telling us, to try to make sure that we stay committed to achieving that goal, to understand what the impact is specifically on students, and how do we need to support them better to that degree completion. And I know we've got some great voices and champions here today to help us to better understand what is happening in education, what's happening in the classroom, but also what we can be doing as a state to engage meaningfully in this work. We know, for example, by looking at the National Student Clearinghouse data, that nationally, and this probably puts this work into context, there were about 2.6 million students who entered college as first-time freshmen in the fall of 2019. But only 74% of those students returned for their second year. And that's the lowest level of returning freshmen into their second year of college since 2012. So we know that our students are struggling. We know that this is across the board, that all students are struggling to continue to stay on their education path. But we also know that low income and minority and traditionally underserved communities are the communities that have been hit hardest by the pandemic. So we need to, from our perspective, look at that data and understand what's really happening. I know John Arnold from ABOR has a great understanding of what's happening with the universities. And even though in Arizona, where there may not have been an enrollment drop, we still see some areas that we need to be mindful of what's happening with that student population. You mentioned the large percentage of online students and what that might mean to us in the Arizona economy. You mentioned that the community college enrollment is down over 16%. These are not issues that we can just ignore. I think what we need to do is understand them, lean into them, come together as a state, stay focused on that attainment goal, and realize that we all have a vested interest in ensuring that every student in Arizona has an opportunity to succeed in post-secondary education. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here and for you to provide leadership in this conversation that's so important to our state.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the context in the background. I want to go to John. John, you've heard the numbers, you've seen the numbers yourself. Tell us, what is the situation in our university system?
Thanks, Luigi, and thanks, Paul. We appreciate the partnership and the dedication so much, and look forward to continuing to work on these issues with you. So the data I'm going to review is from fall of 2020. We are just getting early glimpses of fall 2021. Won't have complete data for another couple of months, but so far our early returns for fall 2021 are pretty positive. We need to get that broken down, but it looks like we are experiencing a pretty significant enrollment recovery right now. But looking at last year, as Paul said, Arizona was already struggling with enrolling its students into higher education. And in many ways, we just saw an exacerbation of that with COVID-19. So just a few statistics. Overall, university enrollment was up about 4%. However, our on-campus enrollment was down about 2%. Our online enrollment was up 22%. So
wow,
we're up over 65,000, 66,000 students that are online now, versus about 140,000 that are on campus, 130,000. And that's a trend that we've been seeing for the last 5 years. Our on-campus enrollment has actually flat over the last 5 years, where we've seen a steady increase with online enrollment. Well, with that change, it really changes our student mix. We have more part-time students than we've ever had before. We have more non-resident students than we've ever had before. Right now, well, last year the system was about 52% resident, 48% non-resident. And within those, so last year, our resident enrollment was up about 1%. Our non-resident was up about 8%. And that continues that same trend. Within the next couple of years, will be a majority non-resident system. Luigi, do you have a question?
Yeah. I want to make sure that I'm understanding the numbers. When you say that you're seeing an enrollment growth this fall compared to last year, the base is last year, right? So not from 2019, but if you're looking at 2019, how are we doing exactly?
And I don't have that level of detail yet. ASU is going to enroll more people than they ever have before, and they do that every single year. What the mix is online on campus, I think their on campus is going to experience some growth.
So is it fair then to say that
the mix of resident, non-resident, I don't have that yet.
So is it fair then to say that you're seeing explosive growth with online students, means out-of-state students, but then resident students on campus or Arizonans who are going to the universities, that number is flat. It's either flat or it's not growing as much as we would like to.
That's correct. So our resident enrollment last year was up about 1%. Our on-campus enrollment was flat. And that has both implications for our state and our state's long-term economy and for our own financial structure. The other one, and this is no surprise to anybody, is our international students were down about 18% last year. We're looking at a pretty significant comeback from international students this fall, we hope. But as I mentioned, all of these numbers are on trend for what we've seen over the last 5 years. So yes, there was an acceleration in some of those numbers because of COVID, but we're seeing a pattern in the state where we've capped out in the number of resident students that are enrolling in our four-year institutions. And that number is capped out at a level that is significantly less than the national average. If you start breaking it down, and we like to start with our 9th grade population, because we know we lose students before they graduate from high school. So if you start with our 9th graders, only about 18% of Arizona students end up achieving a four-year degree. Nationally, that's around 35% end up with a degree. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has suggested over the next 10 years, 50% of all new jobs created will require a four-year degree as a minimum education requirement. So again, we're producing at 18. Our current workforce is around 29% has a four-year degree. So you just think in terms of we're retiring at 29% and producing at 18%. That's a long-term economic disaster for this state. And the flip side is that means we're going to rely on importing four-year degrees from other states, and
Right.
we leave our own students behind in the economy that's coming over the next 2 decades.
Right. Thanks for that, for laying out the situation on the ground in the universities. I want to go to Superintendent Gutierrez, because obviously the K-12 system is the pipeline. The healthier the K-12 system that we have, the more students we get in our higher education. Ma'am, what about in your case? How are your district doing?
Well, again, this worldwide pandemic definitely hit us hard. It hit us hard in that we were not in person. We were online, and because of that, the one focus that we have, we all know that we need to have our students engaged in their learning. And when they're engaged in their learning, they're very successful. And it was extremely difficult because we had to pivot on a dime and go from 100% in person, not return from spring break, and be 100% online. So the learning curve was great, not only for our students, but for our teachers. And again, wanting our students to be engaged was extremely difficult when they were looking at a flat screen. And that's what was happening worldwide. Our students, or I should say nationwide, our students were looking at a flat screen. Most of those screens were blank. There was a name, and there might be some sound that you heard on occasion, but they were pretty much blank. And that's what a teacher was having to teach to, many blank screens. And students did not have engagement as much as we wanted, the engagement that was necessary. It was void. And our students, and we paid the price for that, not being in school. And that is why our focus now is doing everything in our power to stay in school and keep our schools open. It's absolutely essential that we do so. And we have to target all of our students. Before, with our partnerships, we focused a lot on our lower socioeconomic students, our first generation, our dreamers, our students at risk. And today, that focus has to be on all of our students, because our students whose trajectory was always college going suffered greatly during this pandemic. They too were not engaged. And we learned they needed their teachers, they needed their friends, they needed the extracurricular, the whole package to be able to continue on that trajectory. Many of them did not enroll to the university.
As a parent, I have a 10-year-old kid who I've never seen his grades seesaw like they did in the past 2 years. He was doing pretty well in 2019. During the pandemic, he was doing terrible. And at the beginning of this year, he was doing just horrible because he was doing online classes, and the format, the engagement, it's hard to focus for a 10-year-old kid. And I can imagine, children who are younger looking at a screen and trying to understand the lessons that are being given by a teacher who's having to deal with, who's teaching to a bunch of screens. It was really tough for him. Andrea, your program really helps students, gets them engaged, prepares them for joining higher education. What about in your case? What are you seeing? What did you see the last 2 years?
Right. Yes, our program does partner with schools, college access partners, and we also provide direct services to students to support them in their journey towards post-secondary. We start at the middle school level and follow them through even their first year of college in some of our programs. And so what we're seeing is that the students are eager, their sentiment, their motivation to pursue post-secondary hasn't changed. We've surveyed them, right? Like, do you want to go to college? Yes, I want to go to college, or I want to pursue some type of post-secondary education. But the pandemic did affect our ability to engage with students effectively, to engage with schools effectively, and rightly so. I mean, our students are human beings. They're part of a community, of a home, and their concerns and fears about health, their access to a private, quiet space, their access to healthcare, their access to emotional stability just in life, just really impacted their ability to engage in post-secondary planning in a way that they had been. And as practitioners, our services that work well, right? The one-on-one, the student contact, the rah, let's do FAFSAs, and educators and motivation, like, we were impacted too. So it was almost like a perfect storm that created just such a challenging time for our students, for us. And so our students haven't changed their goals, but our ability for our system and our educators to respond to that is greatly challenged at this time.
And right, we have to remember that many of our communities have had to deal with hospitalizations, deaths, and so all these problems are compounding on top of having to find a computer, Wi-Fi, or internet access, and as you mentioned, just find that quiet time amidst all this turmoil to focus on their education and getting to college. Now, Dr. Kaur, I know that the community colleges have been really hammered hard by this pandemic. What is the situation in your systems?
I appreciate the opportunity to address that. Yeah, we, Paul started out by sharing that it was first generation students of color who were most likely to be impacted by this pandemic. And that's our student population. At AWC, 66% of our students are first generation. We're 71% Hispanic. We were down 16% in enrollment last fall. What we're seeing, we started classes on Monday, so we do have a little better data than ABOR does, because we started a little bit earlier. Right now, we're up 13%, which means we're not back to where we were, but we've made great strides. It's almost like a V-shaped recovery. And Arizona Western colleges and community colleges across Arizona have stepped up and been really aggressive and creative in reconnecting, right? I hear the term engagement a lot, or connection. We needed to connect with our communities, and community colleges are uniquely positioned to do just that. Let me just give you one quick, maybe one or two really quick examples. Laptops. We've distributed over 1,000 laptops into the hands of our students this year. They're a semester-long rental. Whether you're taking 6 credit hours or 16 credit hours, if you need a laptop, we want you to have the tools in your hands to succeed. During the pandemic, we put Wi-Fi in the parking lot, and we'd have folks pull up in their car and sit under the solar panels and do their homework in our parking lot. It looked like a tailgate out there some days. It was pretty cool. And we also know that people struggled. People were not able to achieve their educational goals during the pandemic. So one thing we've done here at AWC is we instituted what we're calling a free-peat. It's exactly what it sounds like. If you took a class during the pandemic and you did not get the grade that you wanted, maybe you didn't have Wi-Fi, maybe you didn't have a laptop, maybe you were sharing the laptop with your family at home, or maybe you just didn't like studying online. You come on back to us this year, you take that same class, and there are no tuition or fees associated with that class. Don't let your struggles of last year define your educational journey. Reconnect with us, come on back. It won't cost you a dime. Pass that class. And when you get the A or B, it's going to replace the D or F you got during the pandemic. And now you're reconnected, you're back on track. I got a whole list of stuff that community colleges are doing in Arizona, but I don't want to take up the full hour, but it's about reconnecting with our communities, getting them back on track and providing them the support they need so that they achieve the baccalaureate degree that they want at one of our state universities. And as a state, we do achieve 60% degree attainment.
Just real quick on that one, how did you re-engage with those students? How did you reach out to them? What exactly did you do?
Yeah, what didn't we do, right? So one thing we knew is we knew many of our high school students. We have amazing partners with, we have amazing partners in Yuma Union High School District that's been working with Helios for a long time with tremendous results. But we knew many of those students were disconnected or lightly connected during their high school years for a number of reasons, right? So part of what we did is reach out to those high school students and this past summer say, come to Arizona Western College and you can take a class free of charge. And here's the cool thing. When you pass, say you didn't pass your English class in high school, you took that English class here at the college, we could articulate it back to the high school. We called it the finish line program. Get across the high school finish line. Don't let this pandemic stop you. We're here for you. So advertising, emails. We have great data sharing with Yuma Union High School District. Just our position in the community is a little different, right? So I spent 16 years in Chicago area community colleges and then in the Maricopa system. In Yuma, people look to Arizona Western College. We're so integrated in the community. So boy, we reached out in a million different ways and continue to, right? So we're within 3% of where we were in fall 2019, but we're not where we want to be. So that engagement continues.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I would like to interject on that. I think that's fabulous to hear that, for helping out and reaching out to the high school students. I will tell you, because of this pandemic and lack of engagement, it wasn't lack of technology. Every one of our students, I have 13,000 students, and every one of them have technology in their hands. But I will tell you, our students, we had the highest failure rate we've had in many years. And so for the first time this year, we've always offered summer school, and we offer it at one of the high schools, and we usually have, 1,000 or so students. This summer, we knew that we were behind, and we have to do every intervention that we can at every opportunity. We offered high school, summer school, to every one of our students, whether they were deficient or whether they wanted to get ahead, right. All students. And we had every high school packed. Wow. They were there. They wanted to come, and we offered it free of charge. But their parents wanted them there. They wanted to be there, and it did make a great impact on our students. And we actually had, of our seniors that went back to summer school, we had an additional 150 students graduate because of that. But all of our high schools were packed.
So they were failing or not just completing their grades. They went to summer school. 150 of them graduated,
and they came in person. And that was the kicker. Was they weren't in person until the end of last semester, but it was too late and they were playing catch up. Yes, they were in person and they were very successful and they earned credits. And at every intervention, we will, at every opportunity, we will provide those interventions. So during our fall break, we will offer again during Christmas break, spring break. And we're going to have to do that for several years because the students fell behind.
Right. And I think the pandemic and your strategies to confront it, I think many of them are going to be permanent offerings. Paul, you mentioned earlier the complications and repercussions of declining enrollment, of fewer students going into higher education, whether associate's degree or a vocational program or a bachelor's degree, and what that situation means in the long term, especially for our workforce and our economy. What do you see in if we cannot arrest this situation that we have this challenge that we have, what are we seeing for Arizona?
Well, I think the importance of acknowledging the importance of post-secondary education is as you said, it is the direct tie to the economic future of the state of Arizona. And there's no other way to say it other than that. It's the question of, will we provide to the types of companies that we want to attract to our state, the innovative entrepreneurial companies that are going to change the workforce of the future. What they're seeking and searching from a community that they choose to operate their businesses is the talent of the workforce. And it's the educated workforce that they know that they need. John Arnold made the comment that 50% of the jobs we already know require a university degree, a 4-year degree. We know so many other jobs require at least a 2-year degree or some type of certificate or industry aligned license or certificate. So that question, if there ever was a question, that question's been answered as to what we need to produce from an educated workforce standpoint. And that's what the companies, are going to be looking for from us. The other way, I would say one other quick point, is we also should change our mindset and acknowledge the unique state of Arizona in terms of our growing population and what that means compared to other states. What I think it means is we have in our education system a talented pipeline of a future workforce. The question is, are we as a state going to embrace those students and meet them where their needs are in order to help ensure that they can attain a post-secondary education? We need to look at the data and understand where the students are, where we need to eliminate some of the academic achievement gaps or the degree completion gaps, where they come from. And in general, they typically come from first generation low income minority students. And in Arizona, that's predominantly Latino students. There are equity gaps. We need to address those across the entire system. But the reality is that's the opportunity for the state. Other states would love to have the potential workforce that we already have in our education system. It's just a question of us showing and prioritizing, giving them the opportunity to succeed.
What I'm hearing, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
If I can just follow up on that, there is, it's not all a doom and gloom story. There is some really neat things happening in our state right now, especially with first and family students. We're continuing to see rises in enrollment from first and family students and specifically in Latino students. Last year, despite the declines, we university enrollment with Latino students was up 9%. And that's a trend that we've seen again over the last 5 years. Both NAU and the University of Arizona are recognized as Hispanic serving institutions. And we're going to continue to see a rise in enrollment out of our minority populations.
I would like to echo that also. Our students haven't given up. Our students were just set back because of the pandemic. We have to be in school. We have to have them engaged. We have to continue to work with our partners, Gear Up, ASU, all of the different programs, TRIO, Hispanic Mother-Daughter. My favorite, of course, is American Dream Academy, which is now WeGrad, because the parents are engaged with the students and educating our parents, educating our entire community on the significance of having a post-secondary education is absolutely necessary. And so we're continuing to push. our students, we have over 13,000 high school students enrolled. We are thrilled. We are continuing to grow, and our students do not lack the desire to attend the university. It's just they're having to play some catch up, and we're going to provide all the interventions we can to get them caught up, and we're going to continue to push the enrollment. We do need help, I do believe. FAFSA has been a focus and a push from Helios, from Be a Leader, ASU, from everyone. And that's great, but it's only the starting point, because once they qualify, there's a whole other set of criteria that they have to meet. It is foreign to our first generation students. And I think there has to be more hand-holding, and I really don't think the job is done until the students walk through those university doors, and that then we've been successful in getting them enrolled. Our students are awesome, and all of our partners have been wonderful. And I just think we need to, there's a silver lining in this pandemic, in that it's brought clarity to a lot of needs.
You know, what I'm hearing are two things. I'm hearing how intimately and intricately linked K-12 and higher education are to our workforce development, how good we thrive as a state, you know, how much and how often we can attract those companies that are coming in here looking to our workforce to provide them, you know, the workers that they need so that they can compete not just with companies in our state, but other states, and quite frankly, globally. I mean, the way I look at Arizona, we're competing, you know, we're competing with Seoul, South Korea, with Taipei and Taiwan, all those places. The second thing I'm hearing is that this pandemic exacerbated many of our problems that have been, you know, those undercurrents have been going on for decades. But now we also have an opportunity to really step up and confront those permanent, you know, those challenges that we've faced before, and then create new opportunities as these new challenges brought out by the pandemic, you know, has provided us. I want to go to Andrea real quick. How are you reaching out to students right now? How are you getting them to re-engage? And by the way, if there's a student or a family or a teacher who's viewing this morning scoop, you know, who do they call exactly? What do they do? Which website do they go on to?
Right. Similar to what Dr. Kaur said and Superintendent Gutierrez, we are doing everything. I think one of the silver linings is that we learn how quick we can pivot, right? Like we just outreach in many forms. Also, just changing where our dollars were going, right? We're investing in some types of programs, and these programs are no longer able to provide the services in this way. So our partners, our college access partners in our community, just we're quick and we're fast in diverting their dollars to things that do address student needs at this time. So whether that was technology or phone outreach or texting or websites or videos or, you know, getting up on tables and dancing, we did it all, right? Just to get our students to say, we are here, we love you. And that was another thing that besides being focused on education goals, we also had to say, you know, we really care about you. And I think our educators and our programs really, really did that well. And when it comes to where do our students go to? So we feel like the best connection is the caring adults at their school, and we partner with schools. So I would direct them there. As far as Gear Up, our website, nau.edu/gearup. It has a lot of free resources, downloadable resources for students, for families in English and Spanish. Our phone number is there too, and we're able to connect them to, so we partner with schools and we partner with college access programs. So we're able to connect them with the source that best meets that student's need. And so it's not always Gear Up that provides the service, but it is in our partners, the best connection. And we're happy to make those connections for our students, as well as for our educators who are needing some type of direction on either professional development or other kinds of strategies that have helped during this pandemic. And we're happy to brainstorm and connect them to where they can get just more support for their schools and their teachers.
So,
Hey,
so
Andrea,
for-
you mentioned dancing on tables. We've
Yeah.
done our first TikTok videos. I didn't know what that was 6 months ago, and now I'm TikToking. Whatever
Right.
it takes. Whatever
Whatever it takes, exactly.
congratulations, Dr. Kaur. Very brave of you.
it takes. Or foolish. There's a very thin line between those two things.
Yeah, it's either congratulations or condolences, right? I mean, it's
We do it for the kids.
Andrea, if you can just key in your website and maybe a phone number, because there might be some students that are, not at school right now, so they don't have an adult that they can talk to at school necessarily, but maybe you have a number for them to call to and help them out. And again, if you're a family or a student and you're hearing this one, do take advantage of the resources that are available. I think what we're hearing from the panel members is that they're here to help you, and they're kind of doing everything they can, including TikToking and dancing on tables to get you re-engaged. John, during our prep call yesterday, we talked about this other challenge that we face, especially with young men that they're not really enrolling in higher education. And I want to flesh out, if you can just briefly describe to us, what exactly is the problem that you're seeing, and what does this problem mean to us?
Thank you. And I saw Dr. Kaur nodding as well.
Yeah.
So over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a trend where our enrollments are leaning more and more towards female students versus male students. So last year, we were just over 56% female, which doesn't sound out of whack till you realize that means we were 44% male and dropping. Females tend to stay in school and graduate at a higher rate than males do as well. So last year, 60% of all the degrees we awarded went to women. So we're 60-40. If you look down into that attainment data we talked about, 18%, if you start with ninth graders for women, 22% in Arizona, 23% of female students, female ninth graders end up with a 4-year degree. It's only 14% of boys. So about 14% of our ninth grade boys under our current trends will end up with a 4-year degree. So we are seeing a general disengagement from higher education from our young men. Long term, what does that mean? We're seeing a flip in our workforce, where women are going to have the credentials and the capacity to be the top earners in our economy. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just a major change. I do worry that if these trends continue and we see a continued disengagement of young men from higher education, that again, that's going to damage families individually and our economy as a state. Dr. Kaur, you seeing similar data?
Absolutely, John. I appreciate you teeing it up for me. I shared some data with our district governing board yesterday when we went through some. The difference is even more pronounced at Arizona Western College, where last year 61% of our enrollment was female. Only 39% of our enrollment was male. And in terms of degree completion, the gap is even wider. 64% of our degrees are awarded to females, almost 2 out of every 3 degrees. That's troubling, right? We love to see the educational attainment among female, but we can't give up on half the population. And how we close that gap while maintaining the progress among the female and engage young men in higher education is a huge challenge that I think everyone on this screen and everyone listening and folks across the state have to come together, because there's probably not one solution. There probably needs to be a whole lot of solutions. But at 61-39 and growing, right? It's another percent every year. It's a 10-12-year trend that is troubling.
That's NAU is 64%. Their enrollment is 64%.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going, John.
It starts to change the nature of the institution, the experience, everything when your gender gap becomes that high.
And of course, what we want to see are more women going to the universities and colleges, and but also more men going the same, and not as you mentioned, not giving up on higher education, because we do want everybody to get higher education. That's what our state needs. Paul, talking about strategies to engage both young men and young women, to get them to higher education, to get to 60% by 2030, which is a very ambitious goal. But if we can make strides toward that, that obviously will help our state. Tell us what Helios is doing in this arena.
So thank you. I'd like to speak to two things. One is kind of more tactical and kind of in alignment with what Andrea said about the importance of Gear Up and engaging directly with schools, the high schools, the colleges, the universities directly for help. But back to what are we doing to really specifically support the students? So one specific example and partnership that we have is with the newly announced and emerged organization called Education Forward Arizona. Education Forward Arizona is the new, more robust statewide education advocacy voice in Arizona. It's a combination, the merger of College Success Arizona, Expect More Arizona, and the Achieve 60 AZ entity that was championing completion of the attainment goal. Well, these three entities have merged to create a new, more robust organization. So Helios has partnered with them as a specific example, and maybe an opportunity for students that or parents that might be listening today is one example of how we're reaching out to students, especially if you're a high school graduate from 2020 and have been unable for whatever reasons, probably pandemic related, to start your college career. There's a program we put in place called the Adelante Scholars Initiative, where Education Forward AZ works with the colleges, the university, other college access programs across the state to reach out directly and work with the students, and even provide some incentive scholarship money to get students to start their college career at a community college, at a university, wherever is the best place for them. The point is, those students who have found it difficult to transition from high school graduation in 2020 directly into college, this program is in place to work specifically with those students, and also team up working with graduates of the 2021 class that might also be struggling as well. So this program is in place, but it's just one example, and it's a partnership, because that's the only way these types of programs work, is when they're in partnership with the high schools, with the colleges and universities. Aspirationally, I'll say one other thing that I think we should also address and maybe aspire to achieve. Arizona is one of only a handful of states that does not have a comprehensive state-funded financial aid system for our students. And one of the barriers we know, sometimes, especially real, sometimes just perceived, is the affordability of college. And if we could put a statewide financial aid system in place, one of the things that does is it eliminates that barrier. If we can say to students, your job is to be academically prepared to be successful in college.
And to show up. Your job is just to do that and show up.
Yeah, is show up, be engaged, understand what's needed, prepare yourself academically, socially, emotionally, culturally. We're all there to help and support. But as a state, like many other states do, we see this in Florida, they provide incentives to the students that essentially say, if you're a good student and you're focused and you want to go to college and you graduate from a Florida high school, we're going to make going to college affordable for you. That's a powerful message that we need to also send to all of our students in Arizona as well, is to eliminate that perception that college is not affordable. And if we had a state-funded financial aid package in place, that will be a great start to help send that message and create a college-going culture for every student in Arizona.
I want to go to Superintendent Gutierrez. Ma'am,
Well,
go ahead.
I would just like to add to Dr. Luna, as I 100% agree with that, because I will tell you, as I said, we need to hold our hands through the entire process. When our students have registered the first generation, they truly, it's a learning curve, and they receive FAFSA, but then they go to register. The first thing they get is a registration fee. Mm-hmm. And we say, oh, well, that was $150. Well, $150 to a family that lives paycheck to paycheck is a heck of a lot of money. And that's just one little, okay, and I have my pride and my dignity, so I'm just going to step back and I'm not going to say anything and I'm not going to go. It is that simple. Those little bitty steps that we just take for granted and say, oh, it was just 150, mom wrote a check, dad wrote a check. That doesn't happen when you don't have $150.
How do we address, I'm sorry, Dr. Kaur, go ahead.
No, money does matter, right? And little bits. So just real quick, Arizona Western colleges and many community colleges across Arizona have waived debt, have forgiven debt, because folks struggled during the pandemic. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they own $150, $200, but they, under the old system, they couldn't re-enroll. At Arizona Western College, we wiped everyone's debt.
Wow.
But we didn't stop there. Then we sent them a letter and said, we need you back, reconnect with us. You had a debt. If that was preventing you from coming back and completing your educational goals, please know that we're ready for you to re-enroll. There is no, you don't owe us anything. Get back on track, get reconnected. And I know the Superintendent Gutierrez is going to go next, but I'm fixated on her phrase, our students have not given up. Right? They haven't. It might be the $110 they owe the college that is preventing them from coming back. We said, don't let that be a barrier, and many other community colleges across Arizona have too. So little things matter. So I'm sorry, Superintendent Gutierrez, I kind of cut in on your question.
Oh, thank you.
And it's also even down to vocabulary when we talk about helping students, right? When we tell a student, no problem, that fee can be waived, a student's like, what does that mean, right? So it's very different to say, apply for a waiver or get a deferment. And in our role, we try to help families navigate to the vocabulary that college access has, but why can't we just say it's free, right? But it's not free. And so there's just so many small, complicated challenges that we could easily just get rid of, but our system is just not created like that at this moment.
Yeah, talk about the little things that could end up to be barriers. Waived fee, just crash it and said no fee, something like that maybe would be clear. But Superintendent Gutierrez, I want to go back to you and just really quickly, you mentioned these little things. How do you overcome them?
Well, now, believe me, ourselves, we are now focusing more on these little things and helping our students to understand. And so my discussion now with our curriculum division, our counselors, and reaching out to our partners, because we need to communicate to our partners what our needs are. And our needs have changed. And we've recognized new barriers that were there in the past, but we didn't recognize them. But the pandemic, like I said, there is a silver lining. It has brought a lot to our attention, our attention that we didn't realize. And so now we will work with our partners and we will ask for their assistance. Our partners help us greatly. But when you can't help yourself with what you don't know, when you don't know what you don't know, that is a very scary place to be because we don't progress. So we will continue to reach out with our partners. We'll continue to hold our students' hands. And again, I'm not saying that our students are not capable. Our students are extremely capable. And our parents are extremely supportive. And I always say that our parents send their students to us and trust that we are going to serve them to our absolute best of our ability. They trust that. And because many of our parents aren't high school graduates themselves. So they trust that we're going to do what's in their students' best interest. And they support us, an extremely supportive community. So it's our job.
Thank you. I want to go to John. John, Paul mentioned earlier about potentially creating a statewide financial aid program, which in my mind really means, we're talking about finances here. We're talking about funding. We're talking about the legislature, the state government being able to at least consider the idea and maybe even run with it, something like that. But what other policies would you suggest, would you recommend as we emerge out of this? Well, I was going to say we emerge out of this pandemic. It's really tough to say that. It's really tough to say emerge out of the pandemic, given where we're at right now. And maybe Dr. Crow, when we spoke to him earlier in the year, he said that this pandemic is going to be with us forever. It's not going away. And maybe that is the situation we have. But a few other things that the state government could do to help us. Community colleges, K-12, and universities.
There's a few things. One, we need to stay in class and in person, and we're doing everything we can to create a safe environment on our campuses, so we can keep faculty and students engaged with each other on campus. And we're asking our students and our communities to be wise and to be our partners in that. And so hopefully we can stay on campus. Paul makes a great point about financial aid, and it is this vocabulary, and it is the bureaucratic steps to get to financial aid, because the financial aids in many cases, it's there. If you're a low-income student in this state, we do not charge you tuition, but it's getting that information into those families' hands and then helping them figure out how to show that they're low-income families. And then we use words like scholarship and waiver, and so we have these grand ideas, but we're trying to start with what do we control as a university system, and have we created bureaucratic roadblocks between a qualified student that's coming out of high school and entering into our universities? And the answer is we know that we have, and so we're trying to communicate and understand better. We know students want to come and be successful post high school. So we're doing focus groups and surveys to better understand what's preventing them from doing that. And then our first step is to look at ourselves and say, okay, what are we doing wrong that is setting up these barriers? So for example, we have the Arizona Promise program. Every Pell eligible student does not pay tuition. That's in state law. The legislature gave us $7 million to fund that, and we're going to fund the rest. The Board of Regents said, okay, 7.5, great, good start. We will fund the rest. But a lot of our students don't know what it means to be Pell eligible. They don't know what it means or how to determine if they're Pell eligible. And so, we need to work with the high schools, with the community colleges, with our students to really look through and determine how we can remove those roadblocks. And I agree with Andrea. Instead of a waiver, let's make it administrative, application fee, and let's find these little things that we can wipe out and take those baby steps. That's part one. I think part two, we need to do a better job communicating to our families and students much earlier in the process. Post high school students in 7th and 8th grade need to start thinking about post high school, because they make decisions as 8th and 9th graders that begin to cut off their opportunities post high school, and so
it has to be earlier than that, is what you're saying. Paul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to add another, I think, important opportunity for us, and I'll use an education term, dual enrollment.
Yeah.
The expansion and making expanding and making dual enrollment free to high school students, however we can make that happen, I think will be critically important as well. And it's simple as this. If we really want a really strong education system, we'll start to think about how do we provide opportunities for our high school students to essentially complete their first year of college for free when they're in high school, so that when they transition into post-secondary education, they actually now have to pay for college. They already have 1 year under the belt. That's 1 year less that has to then be paid for in the post-secondary environment. And think how impactful that will be for all students, right? Not just low-income first-gen students, all students, but making it available and free and accessible to every student in our state, really should be another one of our priorities, because we know the impact that has. It's another way of engaging and integrating our high schools with our community colleges, making it a seamless transition from high school to the college environment. But dual enrollment is a really significant opportunity for us to move forward. And I see
Superintendent Gutierrez, really quickly, ma'am.
Yes, and Dr. Luna, I would say thank you. And the first thing we need to be able to do that is we need to make the pathway for our teachers to be certified for dual enrollment a lot easier. They're extremely gifted and the pathway's extremely rough. And secondly, we definitely need the state to address our dreamers because our dreamers are extremely talented students. Some have been here since kindergarten and then they cannot qualify for in-state tuition, and we're losing those students.
And I want to go real quick just to the audience questions, and I apologize to our audience. We only have about 2 minutes here, but there's one question here that I think either Dr. Kaur or John, if you want to answer this one. How can employers be a partner with the education system? This one is from Keisha. I'm with USDA and we did a massive hiring initiative nationwide this year and we did not meet our goals. We could not find enough graduates in the STEM fields we were hiring. We think we needed to start recruitment efforts at the K-12 level, but not exactly sure how to engage with the Arizona educational system. So companies, employers, how can they engage with you? Dr. Kaur and John, just real quickly.
Real quick, they can engage in a million different ways. Sit on our advisory boards, join our foundations, teach for us, engage community colleges. We are in the community, of the community. Engage with us, engage with our career centers. I could go on, but I know time is short, but we thrive, our communities thrive when our local business and industry is engaged in the college. We welcome that engagement. There's a million different ways to do that.
John, really quickly, sir.
Same, all of our universities have engagement offices, either through the foundation or the university itself, internship programs, all that stuff. One quick word on dual enrollment. We have just established a program for teachers to reach those certifications. It is free. It is free. You can sign up through the Arizona Teachers Academy and teachers can come and get the credit hours they need in our system.
Thank you.
And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank our viewers and our listeners for your time. There's a mental, psychological barrier, if you will, when you talk about college, right? High school, college, there's that seemingly pretty wide gap how to get to college, and it's a psychological barrier in my mind. I noted that because I think Superintendent Gutierrez mentioned seamless transition. We can kind of eliminate that barrier so that when we're thinking about college, we're not really thinking of a big step. We're thinking of just another step, right? It's 9th to 10th grade and 10th to college. Maybe we think of it as 10th to 11th grade in our mind, something like that. But in any case, I want to thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. I want to thank Helios Education Foundation for sponsoring this morning's scoop. Paul, Dr. Kaur, Gutierrez, Andrea, John, thank you so much. And to our viewers and our listeners, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Luigi. It was fun.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Okay.